Hi, I'm Daniel Madison. Welcome to this very special masterclass for the M deck. There's a few things on the table in front of me that I want to share with you. Most importantly, obviously, an M deck. I have a few here. I don't know at this point how long this masterclass is going to be, but I know in my mind I want to try to condense it, try to make it more to the point. I know that I can talk a little bit too much at times and go into perhaps too much detail. This deck is something that is very complicated, yet at the same time it's very easy to explain, especially because all of the suits have the same markings. So once you know one of the markings and you know the system, the pattern, then you know the whole deck. But don't worry, I'm going to go through the whole deck and show you everything, followed by a few things, a few wonderful things that you can do with it. If I was to try to show you everything that I can do with this deck, this would be the biggest project that I know. And that's the point of this deck, is that it is a device, it's a tool that you take away and you use however you want for whatever you want. It gives you that ability to have from a thoroughly completely shuffled deck of playing cards to locate and secretly control any playing card that you like. Now there is a conflict there. There's a slight discrepancy in my terms, and I'll get to that in a moment. And the reason I'm repeating all this is because if you're watching this masterclass, then the chances are you've seen a few of my demonstrations already. You know what the deck can achieve. You've picked up a deck, or perhaps you're a part of a slight club and you're contemplating getting one of these decks. Well, by the time you watch this and you know how it works, I think you'll either pick up a deck or you will pick up these very special devices, or this device at the side of me. So I think that's probably a good place to start, the device. So the deck of cards, this right in front of me is an M deck. I'm going to turn the GoPro on in a few moments so you get the Madison point of view. This one, I have over exaggerated the trims so that you can see it clearly on film. These decks, you can barely see the trim, so I'll use those for a few demonstrations later. I'll use this for the explanation. Now, the way that I made this deck, I probably can't tell you too much about that for a few different reasons, but when I first made this deck, I made it on my own, right, with an old deck, and it's a mess, right? I'm embarrassed to show it to you, but I took that deck, proved that the concept worked, and then designed my own device, which I could use to create these decks. Designed these in my mind, designed them on paper, and then took them to places and people who could make them, and they kept coming back with problems. And then I went to Owen O'Hare, the perfect shuffle. I thought about him first, but you know, from knowing him, being a fan from afar, never really speaking to him, he's never done a collaboration, he's never done any jigs for anybody else, so I thought there's no chance he would do something for me. But when I went to him and I said, here's what the deck can achieve, here's what Steve Forte has said about the deck, can you create a device that makes these trims in the exact positions where I need them, so that it's tidy, it's clean, and it's well made, and it's well hidden? And Owen is a genius, because he came back with this immediately. He was like, yep, I can figure that out. Here's what it would look like. Let me get a test made, let me send you one. I can't tell you how quickly he turned this around. I'm speechless and overwhelmed. And Owen, when you see these, if you see these, Owen is a genius. So with these devices, this is the M jig. These two devices are the M jig. And these allow you to make an M deck, but they allow you to do so much more. Like this deck, every value in the deck is trimmed. Every single value. There's not a playing card. Well, there is a playing card, but we'll get to that. Everything is trimmed, but you don't have to be that extreme. If you just want to trim the aces, the kings, or royal flush, and the most beautiful part, as far as I'm concerned, is it is up to you where those perfect trims happen on the deck. I appreciate at this point that might not make any sense for anybody who doesn't know what this is. So, to explain, I'm going to turn my GoPro on and show you the secret trims, the secret modifications to this deck. So this is the first ever M deck. Like I said, I have over exaggerated the trims for this purpose. And a funny story, if you watch my video called Muck, in which I use this very deck, if you look closely at any one of the cards I'm using, pause the screen, you will see the trims on that card because they're so obvious. I was going to say let me find an example, but they're all good examples. I think the queens are a good example. That's why I enjoyed showing them. But hopefully this camera can pick up the queen. So the trims on the queen here and here, very much like a negative stripper, very much like an in-deck. But this is the only time that happens where there's an equal, or should I say symmetrical trim. Every single card in the deck has a trim like that. So I'm going to go through them one at a time, the suits one at a time, the values one at a time, and I probably don't even need to explain because you can probably just see it straight up. So the King of Diamonds, the trim is here and then here, right? So it's not opposite, it's diagonal. So it's always going to be diagonal. So the King trim is here and then here. So when this is in the deck, and I'll put them back on top, the trim of that king is now to my left thumb here. So when my left thumb touches the deck here, that's where I would go to find a king, to cut to a king. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. The queens, you know, are in the middle. The jacks are the opposite of the king. So the jacks here and then here. So it would go king, queen, jack. So the trims have moved up a little bit here so that when they're in the deck, my thumb goes here. So at the moment, and it's important that I mention the aces too, because the aces, I should really have them on top. But this one's a very over exaggerated. Look at this here and this here, almost to the very top, but not exactly to the very top here and here. So when they're on top of the deck, if you look at the positioning of my left thumb goes here for an ace, here for a king, here for a queen, here for a jack, and then here for a 10. Right, so there's 5 main points across the side of the deck, and I can use either thumb, or I can use finger 2 at the front of the deck, and then the corners, we'll get to the corners in a moment. So I just told you the kings are next. Now the 9s are, for anybody who has used Black Mariah, you can see the 9s have now become the Black Mariah. So I've trimmed the corners. So we put a corner cutter, and I've actually used the Black Mariah for the 9s. So you get the 9s by feeling on the corner. Then the 8, as you can imagine, it goes around the deck. So ace first, ace, king, queen, jack, 10. So it's going down, right down the deck. And then 9's on the corner here. So if we turn the deck around this way now, and this is another 5 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we've got 8 here. Just to fully show you, that one's a pretty obvious trim. Here, not on the corner, because that would be a 9 here and here. Now these trims on the side, on the edges of the deck, are obviously slightly wider than the ones on the back, and that's why I marked arguably the most important or useful playing cards, ace, king, queen, jack, 10, right, for gambling purposes. And on the back it is narrow, so it's roughly a centimeter, right? So the 8 is here, then the 7 is a little bit further down there, so a little bit more to the edge. Let me show you the 7 of diamonds. Let me show you the 7 of clubs. So the 8 was here, the 7's just moved over a little bit, so it's here. The 6 is right in the middle. So 6s are relatively easy to find because it's symmetrical front and back. You're gonna stop right at the 6s in the middle. So when we look at one of the 6s, it is symmetrical here and here. The 5s, as you can imagine, we just follow the deck around. So now the 5 is here and here. Then the 4s, almost at the very edge, almost at the corner, which means then the corner is saved for the 3s. So we have the reverse Black Mariah on all the 3s on this corner. The 2s are the only card that is untrimmed in this deck. And I'm going to leave them untrimmed for the moment because there's a few options, there's a few things that you can do. And this is where it becomes your choice what to do with these playing cards. But as standard, these are breather crimp, reverse breather crimp cards too. So you can cut to them anywhere in the deck, or you can find them by that difference in the air in the deck. We'll get to that when we get to the 2s. We're going to go all the way through the deck. Now, even in this deck, even though it's very much exaggerated, you can't really see the trims. Even though they're massive, they're huge, you can't really see them. And that's a few things happening there. One, this deck is very used, so the sides have kind of got that grey touch to them. But then it's an edge-to-edge deck, so it is beautifully hidden in the continuation of that red design. So it's very well hidden in a deck like this. So just to run you through and show you where those markings are if the deck were to be shuffled. So we'll thoroughly shuffle the playing cards, and then we'll go through and find each card one at a time, just to show you how to do it and which part to trim up, or which part to riffle to. And there's a few different ways. So obviously at first we're going to focus about here on the surface. So let's focus on aces. Now we know that aces are right here, right towards the edge of the deck. So when you're shuffling on the table like this, your hands land naturally on the deck like this, right? They land very naturally here. So that means that my left thumb can just riffle up very gently. And when I feel a stopping point, I know that that is an ace. And that is the first and probably the main method that you would use when shuffling these on a table. But a very important thing of this note is I can see the trims, I can see where they are. So I don't have to go looking. You don't have to look because you can go by feel alone, but I can see where the trims are. So that is so helpful because now that I can see them, I can just cut to that point, pull the bottom packet across for the shuffle, and the first ace is here. So now I would shuffle, and now I've just successfully shuffled an ace to the top of the deck. And then we can repeat that a few more times. So I find the other ace, pull to the side for the shuffle, and you'll see the ace is here. So now I just shuffle again, making sure that ace lands on top. Now I have 2 aces on top, and then you repeat until you've got all those cards. If you're looking for 4 of a kind, of course. If you're looking for one of the aces, let's say for example somebody named name any card, or ace of diamonds. What I'm going to do the process of finding all of the aces, and while I'm shuffling you can glimpse playing cards, right? So I'll find the other 2 aces and I can see them there. So now when I shuffle, I'm going to shuffle very high on that last card, and that card was lifted high enough for me to see that it was the ace of spades. So just to reverse, when I shuffle like this, my thumb went up like this, pretty high up, and then dropped, so I could see which card it was. So we'll find the other one right there, and then shuffle, take a peek, and push it on top. So I only have to do that 4 times at the most, 4 shuffles at the most, which is fair, which is fine, because it just looks like I'm shuffling the playing cards. And little do they know, in those shuffles you're controlling all 4 of the cards. And of course you don't have to find all 4 of the cards. If somebody names, let's do it for real actually. Let's go for the Jack of Diamonds. So I'll show you the shuffle as I'm doing it. So the Jack of Diamonds, because it's on this side of the deck, I'm not going to reach over with my left hand and shuffle over here. That would look strange in this moment. So obviously I'm going to use my right thumb this time. So first of all I can see where the jacks are, so I can cut straight to them and then start shuffling on top. And in that case I saw that that was the Jack of Hearts, so I know that I have to keep going. So I look for my other Jack and I can see that they're fairly in the middle. Once again, take a peek as it goes on top, and then I found the Jack of Diamonds. So it took 2 shuffles to find a randomly thought of playing card. Then you can do whatever you want with that card. So let's talk about the thumb positions in the event of shuffling the playing card. So we know that the aces are on this side, on the left side. So what I'm doing to find those aces, you know what? I'm going to move the camera up a little bit so that you can get a better view, an actual mad point of view. So shuffling on the table, my left hand, my left thumb would take over. Now it's arguable whether you want to be in control of the 3s too, which you can on with the left thumb, or right finger too, because it's here. So you'd lift upwards like this, or upwards here to find a 3. And then the natural position of my hands as my thumbs hit the back of that deck is already on the ace. So it's very natural to find those aces just riffling up as you would. If I want to find a king, I've got to just adjust a little bit, and it's just a matter of moving your thumb down to the right spot. And always go by visual too if you can, because you can see where to cut to find those cards. Now the way that I'm doing that, because for the most part I'm relying on seeing where those trims are so that I can just go straight to them like this, then I don't need to try too hard with the riffle. When you practice this blindfolded, it changes a little bit because you don't have that visual. So you have to simply grip the deck, press down with finger 1 on top, and then riffle 1 card at a time until you get the desired stopping point. Now, this can be done really quick. Like, you don't have to be here like this until you find it. You'll find you can go pretty fast, and then it stops very naturally on that trim, on that missing part of the playing card. So the thumb would then move down here for a king. For the queen is now optional. You've got to go with what feels the most comfortable with your hands. And I find my right hand works far better with the queens than my left hand. It might be different for you, and this is something you've got to discover when you're playing with the deck. So if I just move my right hand over a little bit, not just my thumb, that might look a bit strange, but my hand takes over the deck a little bit, and now I reach a bit further with my thumb, then I can very easily cut to the queens. So up, found a queen, split to the side for a shuffle. Of course, and something I should have mentioned earlier, when you're starting those shuffles to find those playing cards, the first move should probably be a cut. So you start by cutting the deck, because that means I've got 1 queen on top already before I've even started shuffling. So even within my first shuffle, I've got 2 queens on top of the deck because of that cut. Again, the right hand onto the jack. So I'm over here and I just riffle up, and it's going to naturally stop at a jack. Same with the 10. The 10's a little bit further down. Now, I'm going to warn you about a conflict, something that could happen. This has happened to me a few times, and I couldn't figure out straight away why it was happening until my brain kicked in and realized it's to do with the symmetry and how straight the deck is. Because when you're trying to find a 10, if the deck isn't straight, you can sometimes accidentally find an ace because of that negative space on the other side. Because the ace is here, and then the ace is here, but the 10's here. So if that ace isn't straight with the deck, so if the deck isn't completely straight, it can cause problems. But I've only found that happen a few times with the aces and the 10's. And it kind of only happens by accident, really. So just when you're going for a 10, it's just worth noting, make sure the deck is more straight than it typically would be, just to play it safe. So the 9's, again, you've got options. You can use your thumb. Obviously, your thumb's in the best position. So you're going to riffle up the side like this, and then stop on a 9. Now, it gets a little bit complicated after 9 going downwards, because we're using finger 2, and finger 3. Now finger 3 is going to feel really awkward for you, and in fact the same hand, both hands, you're going to use finger 2 and the knuckle and the part of finger 3. So look at the positions of my fingers already. So this finger is on the edge, so I can very naturally stop on a 3. If I focus on this side for now, like my thumb's on the edge, if I go round further like this, all of a sudden it looks so strange. Like, you can't get away with doing that. So what I'm going to do, logically, you'll feel like using finger 3 on the right hand to go down here, and then the knuckle goes up the back. But as you can see, it doesn't work too well. So instead, use the other hand and use finger 3 of the left hand, and the knuckle, you'll feel the knuckles already in position. Now it can't quite reach the bottom of the deck, but what it can do, it can roll a little bit over the deck like this, and then roll back up. And you'll find, after a bit of practice, you can riffle the cards on the back of that knuckle like this. You can also lift the deck off of the surface and let it riffle downwards. I hope the camera can see that. Like this, and you'll find some natural stopping points. Or should I say unnatural, like it doesn't feel natural at all, especially at first, but once you get used to it, it becomes fairly easy. Now, an easier option, which you have to compromise the visual, the way it looks from the front. I naturally hold the deck like this when I'm about to shuffle. Now, you can hold further on the edges, and look what position finger 3 is in now all of a sudden. Now I'm in a position where I can feel the side of that deck with the part of my finger, which is much easier to do, and it's the same feeling for all the other cards. Now, again, it's up to you, whatever feels easiest on your fingers down the side. So see that natural stop, it just happens, you just get a feeling. Now, one important note at this point when you're practicing how difficult it gets at this point, your knuckle can't possibly reach the bottom of the deck, can't reach the bottom of the playing card. So what I do, if I've riffled up and I haven't found the stopping point underneath like this, then I will cut the deck exactly in half, so that so the chances are, if you didn't feel it on your fingers, it has to be below your fingers because you would have felt it. So I've moved it up to the top so that I can then riffle up again with my fingers to find that card. And then of course you got 5, 4, and then 3s on the corner, and the 2s, breather crimps. Even with all of those negative spaces, you can still cut to any one of those 4 breather crimps at any point, and they don't interfere with the negative spaces. Now, considering your mind will still be locked on how difficult this is to do with your thumbs, what's beautiful about our deceptive practices and the deceptive practices in general with playing cards, when I'm shuffling the playing cards on the table, I'm not stuck to the table, right? I'm not limited to the table. So at any point, I can pick the deck up and start shuffling in my hands and start controlling the deck in my hands and start cutting the playing cards. So that's something that I lean into when I'm practicing with this deck. If a card is named, or if I think of a card below 9, there isn't 2 or 3, so 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, if one of those cards is on my mind, then instead of doing this, riffling up the sides, I'll pick the deck up and do the rest in my hands. And also it looks quite natural to the participant because it seems more relaxed, like you don't have too much of an order, or you're not stuck in your ways of shuffling the playing cards just on the table or just in your hands. So I would advise, instead of trying to master this, pick the deck up, find those cards at the back, which is exactly how you do it. So hold the deck naturally. In fact, we'll go all the way back to the ace with holding the deck in our hands. For anybody who doesn't shuffle on the table, this is so much easier than shuffling on the table, because with the aces, let's start with the aces, you can see them first of all, so I know that one's there, so I can cut straight to it. Obviously when you riffle down, the ace is stopping on the bottom of this packet, right? So I can do this, cut, and I've got one of the aces to the bottom of the deck. If you want that ace to be on the top, then I found the easiest way is turn the deck this way and riffle up with the thumb the same way that you would on the table, like this, cut the deck, and now I've got an ace on top instead of on the bottom. But look where my thumb is, my left thumb naturally. It is naturally in position. Doesn't matter whereabouts on the side of that deck it is, it always looks natural. So I can get a 3 over here, I can get an ace here, touch further down for a king, queen's just below the middle, can see her there, jack, 10, there's one right there, 9, arguably the easiest playing card because it's the Black Mariah playing card, 8, on the edge of the back, 7 a little bit further down. In fact, I caught one here, and then one here, do two together. And that's something that you'll feel as well. You'll feel a difference in the riffle if there are two, if they're paired together. 6 right in the middle, another very easy card to cut to. 5 a little bit further down, I can see that one at the bottom. 4 right here, sorry, here, riffled the wrong way. And then 3 is on the edge here. Now, this is difficult, but as with, you know, as with anything, with enough practice, you can find these cards with one hand. You don't need this hand. So while someone names a playing card, you can be just talking like this and gesturing, keeping yourself moving. And I can be riffling down the side of the deck with one hand on any of those points until I feel a stop. Depending on the card that's named, I can turn the deck this way to do the same thing, riffle down here, here, or the most difficult thing, pinky count. So I'm going to pull down pinky count. So my finger right now is in the position of the aces. So if I need the aces with one hand, then I've just got to pull down until I find that stopping point. And all with one hand, not even having to look, not even having to use two hands, I've been able to find a cutting point for an ace so I can get the deck. Let's do that with another playing card. Let's use a queen, which is a little bit more difficult. I'm going to use finger 2 like this, pull down, feel it naturally stop. Now when I come back to the deck, I can go straight for a cut. And I've managed to shift one of those queens. But you'll find your pinky, that's perfect position for the aces, perfect position for the 3s. Move on to finger 3 for the kings, finger 2 for the queens, for the jacks, and for the 10s, and then finger 1's right on the front to match with that 9, the 9s. But I wouldn't recommend this at the front because of this discrepancy from your participant. It's always best to stay at the back. Now, you can also find those cards by dribbling in the right position. So if I want to find a few more queens, then I'm going to dribble. My thumb is going to meet the deck in the middle here and then dribble, and you'll find that it naturally stops because of that negative space on a queen. This is a really fun way of finding those playing cards. So you could have somebody name a playing card. Once they've shuffled the deck, they name any playing card. Then you can riffle the deck like this. So a king, you could say, I'm going to find all the kings, have them shuffle again, do the same thing, have them call stop, and it's just always going to be on one of the named cards if you riffle in the right position. And of course you can do that from the back. So you have an instant dribble force on your hands if the playing card is in the right position. But the chances are, like if you said name a playing card or a number, and whatever they name, you look for that position in the deck where you need to riffle and see if there's one near the top. Then you're in a perfect position to do an instant dribble force. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll shuffle, and let's just think of a random, let's go for 7, and just any of the 7s, just for example. So I can see the 7s here, they're near the top, which is perfect, ideal. So I'm going to riffle, ask my participant to call stop. They call stop, and it just happens to be a 7. Now, if they named a 7 of clubs and you got this, they can say, okay, wrong card, let me try again. Call stop and have them do it again and keep doing it, because it becomes more of an impressive feat that way, that you've not only found their card that they named, but all of the cards from that suit. And speaking of forces, we can use the same deck for getting ready for a classic force. So if there's a playing card that we need, once they've shuffled the deck and we get the deck back, I can see what I'm looking for, so I can just riffle. So let's go for a jack, and I've got a jack now, ready for a classic force. I've protruded it from the deck to jack of diamonds, and now I can go into my classic force, feed that card to them, and you can do that with any of the cards. Now, what I've just shown you, that way of finding a playing card and protruding it from the deck, this leads into a beautiful center deal demonstration, because when you get the deck back, you can find those cards that you need. So let's use a queen and just very quickly shift them into this position under the deck, so that it looks like you've just taken back a shuffle deck, put it in your hand, and then deal, and you've dealed the named playing cards. Now back to shuffles and controls for a moment. Let's say you can have an overhand shuffle where you find any playing card because of the way that you're going to overhand shuffle. So my hand's going to be like this. Let's go for a 5. If you look where my hand naturally goes here, my thumb lands on the 5. So I riffle down to that 5 here. Now I shuffle everything from below it on top, and just like that I've managed to control a 5 to the bottom of the deck. So let's say we want another one. I riffle down, I've got my 5 again here. Now I'm just going to keep that other 5 with my fingers like this as I shuffle the rest away. Once again I riffle down, you can see the 5 there. This time I just have to take 2, 1, 2, and then shuffle the rest on top, and just in those simple shuffles I've managed to control 3 of the 4 5s to the bottom of the deck. Now you can do the same thing with your thumb. So if I'm holding the deck like this, and remember when you turn the deck face up, obviously those locations, those trims all reverse now. So if I want an ace, it's over on this side. Let's say I want a 10. I can see where the 10s are right there. Look, my thumb actually caught on that. It would typically do this, go over here. So I riffle there. Once I've got that break, I can throw that off, back jog the 10, and then shuffle everything below the 10, and I managed to control the 10 in another variation of the over shuffle control. Now, in the hands, if we're going to do riffle shuffles, if you study the way that you would naturally do a riffle shuffle, now there's a few ways. I would typically do this, swing first, and then riffle. But you know, a lot of people, it's very common to do this and then shuffle this way. Now, in that nice Irish shuffle there, by the way, in the action of splitting the deck like this, I can find the card that I want, making it look like I'm just starting a shuffle. So on this edge, obviously it's anything below a 9. So let's go for 6. So if I riffle to a 6 first, then do this. That's a 6 here. Obviously I did that face up. Let's do that face down with another 6. Riffle, it stops naturally on a 6. Now if I shuffle everything inside that, I've got a 6 on the bottom and a 6 on top also. You can do that with any position because you just got to move your thumb to the right position. Now at a push you could do it laterally, so you could do this and then shuffle like this. Not so common shuffle, but obviously accepted as a shuffle. Finding whichever card you want from the side in the very same way. Now there's 2 more pretty big things I want to talk about before we arrive at the end of this masterclass. First of all, dead cutting. Obviously you can dead cut with this deck because you don't have to rely on riffling those playing cards, especially when you can see where those marks are. So I'm going to try and show you an example of dead cutting to 4 different playing cards. And Charles, I need your help. We need a random playing card. I know I've said a lot of playing cards at the moment. So a random number. That's good, Charles. Let's actually go for the kings. So the deck's thoroughly shuffled. I see where those marks are, so I go straight in for the kill. Cut the deck. First card is a king. The cards can be shuffled once again. And of course you're seeing this from my angle, so you're seeing what I'm actually doing. From the front, this looks like I'm just dead cutting, but I am actually riffling a tiny bit at that point just to make 100% sure I'm cutting to that point. But from the front, because they're just seeing my fingers on the front and finger one's holding it down, it's almost impossible to see that there's a slight riffle going on. It just looks like I'm grabbing the deck and then lifting it and then revealing a playing card like this. 4 kings, although one of them is a king of diamonds, so let's go for 5 kings. And that is the 5 kings. And of course you can do the same thing with the back. You just got to see the markings, know where you're cutting, and then just cut, make it look like a single cut to get to the 4 of a kind. Of course, you can do that blindfolded, but the only thing that changes is you're compromising the secret. You're kind of giving away the secret because looking away, if I now have to find, let's go for jacks. If I now have to find jacks, I do actually have to riffle a little bit. Was that a jack? Now, it wasn't much, but still, if that jack was closer to the top, let's try one close to the top if there is one. Like there, but because I'm not looking, I couldn't find one, so that means they're closer to the bottom than the top. So just to show you, yeah, another one here, and yeah, all the jacks in this case are to the bottom of the deck, so it is a little bit more dangerous doing that. Now, one thing that I will, one important note, when you're finding the playing cards and shuffling them all to the top of the deck, you have to be careful on that last riffle on this point that your thumbs are not in the wrong place, because they might catch two playing cards because of the notches. So just something to be conscious of. So speaking of those notches, the last major thing that I want to show you with this deck is that if you know what you're looking for, when you get used to those trims, you can use this as a marked deck of playing cards. So I'll show you how, and hopefully the camera will be able to do this too, so you'll be able to play along. I'm going to put 5 cards here. I'm going to move them together, and just from watching along with me, I don't know what these cards are, but can you tell me what this card is? I can tell straight away which number it is, and I think there's another one of these too. Oh no, so this is the opposite. So it's like a Black Mariah is here, so we know it's a 9. This is the opposite. You see the corners here, so that's a 3. This is also the corners, so I saw another 9 there, and obviously I didn't choose these, this is just purely random. So now these markings, these cuts, the trim should I say, are at the back in this case here, just towards the edge, so I can tell that's an 8. And this one you can see a notch here and here, so I know that this is an ace. Once you get used to the notches, you'll be able to tell which card is which, even in a participant's hand or an opponent's hand across from you. It's worth now mentioning the 2s, talking about the 2s, because they're unmarked, they're untrimmed. What I do in that case, because even through all that shuffling and all the use of this deck, if I cut lightly enough, I'm always going to cut to a 2. You just have to be careful that you don't grip the deck too hard when you're lifting up. Be as gentle as you can, and you'll always get a 2. The only way to avoid a 2 is by gripping at the cutting point. So if you just don't grip, and also with the breather crimp, look closely, you can see the gap going all the way around the deck. Like there's one just here that's fairly obvious, the 2 of clubs. Now for anybody who doesn't know the reverse breather crimp, the way that I do this, get the card like this, put your thumbs in the back, finger 2 on the front here and here, so your thumbs kind of like this, and then press in between your fingers and drag. Don't go all the way to the corners, start in the middle, just go here and here, and then put it back in the deck, shuffle, and that will retain its shape. As long as you do it hard enough, as long as you press hard enough and bend hard enough, no matter how much this deck is shuffled, you're always going to be able to find those 2s. So now the deck is thoroughly shuffled. If I just cut very gently, see how a few cards dropped then? This card can't drop because of that reverse breather crimp, and that isn't even the card that we just cut. This one is. Now of the endless things that I could show you what can be done with this deck of playing cards, it doesn't even make sense me trying or starting suggesting tricks. This is the answer to all tricks, and any tricks, at least tricks that involve finding a playing card somehow magically that's lost inside a deck of playing cards, thus removing any need for sleight of hand. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of sleight of hand, technically speaking, at certain points, but now you have every playing card that you want at your fingertips from a shuffled deck of playing cards. But I wanted to suggest something a little bit out there. Have the deck in order. Have the deck in the order that you like. I would suggest all spades, all hearts, all clubs, all diamonds. Now put this deck in your pocket, and now you have an advocate without having an advocate. You have a pocket index that is just a deck of playing cards. Because when you reach into your pocket, if you have it sideways like this, when your hand goes naturally in your pocket, your thumb is hitting the side of the deck. So you know to go here for an ace, king, queen, jack, 10, you know, and because it's spades, hearts, clubs, diamonds, you know that the first notch here would be an ace of spades, Ace of hearts, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, right? So you can count. This is how you're going to be able to find individual playing cards when somebody names, for example, 9 of clubs. You know that the clubs is a third of the way down, so that would be the third notch at the back, would be the 9 of clubs, and you can do this in your pocket. If they're naming a card on the back edge, because your hand's in your pocket, you can just tilt the deck up this way and still do the same thing with your thumb and pull that card out, getting it into a gambler's cup. Now, I'm not teaching that fully here, I'm only just kind of brushing over it because I want to make a dedicated video for that, using the M deck for the slide club. And speaking of all the tricks and suggestions and ideas that I could share with this deck, them two I am saving for the slide club. So if you want to continue this journey into learning things that can be done with an M deck, then join the slide club, join me in the slide club. I have quite a few different ideas, but for now with this masterclass, hopefully you know everything you need to know to get you started in the practice and the mastery of the M deck. Now, if you've picked up an M deck from my site, from Madison.cards, when you take it out of the box, you'll be able to see notches. I'm sure you'll be able to see those notches, and you'll be able to appreciate how subtle they are. But they are made in a way that doesn't make it impossible for you. I hope I said that right. If you want to make them even finer for yourself, so you can barely even see them, if at all, and if you want to make M decks with your own decks, with any decks, then that's why I made these. That's why we made the M jigs, the Madison jigs, so that you can apply, you can create one of these decks with any deck that you like. So in picking these up from my website, and we've only made a very small run of these come with a workshop teaching you exactly how to create the decks. But the greatest thing, as I've said earlier, is you can decide where those notches go on the card. So you can take a card and have a perfect notch at any point, anywhere around the deck. You can have the aces here, the kings here, and nothing else. You can have just in the middle, so you can end up with a completely tailor-made deck of playing cards for yourself. So for Charlie, if he made his own version of this, that would be the C deck. This is the M deck because it's my deck, it's Madison deck. But take these jigs, make your own variation, make your own version, and that would become your deck. Now, to repeat something that I was going to say from the start, you know, this first felt like it was going to be a massive masterclass, and even though it's such a complicated deck of playing cards, you've seen it's been fairly easy to explain. All it is understanding, knowing where the notches is, and practicing how to cut to those, not exactly perfectly, but secretly enough so that nobody sees what you're doing. So I hope that this masterclass has been good and useful for you. If you're watching this and you don't have an M deck, hopefully at this point it will encourage you to get an M deck or get the jigs, everything at Madison.cards. If you have ideas for the M deck, for this concept, or if you want more ideas coming from me, they're on the way soon. Join us in the Slack Club, pull up a seat at the card table next to me, Madison.ist. But for now, this is the M deck. That was the M deck masterclass. I'm Darling of Madison. Mad love.